With communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it. A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory, and now I got to deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
So let's just get right to it. Bill Maher is back at it again, taking a flamethrower to woke culture. And honestly, whether you agree with him or not, you've got to admit, the man knows how to stir the pot. I mean, he's not exactly new to controversy. For decades, Maher has been torching conservatives, mocking Republicans, and going after anyone who denied climate change or pushed Bible Belt dogma. But now he's turned that same razor-sharp wit on his own side. The Democrats, the progressives, and the self-anointed warriors of woke. And let me tell you, they are not taking it well. Maher isn't just telling jokes here. This isn't late-night comedy fluff. What he's doing is more like a cultural intervention. An intervention for a movement that's gotten drunk on its own slogans and hashtags, convinced it can literally rewrite reality. Think about what he's saying. Communists once thought they could reinvent human nature, create a brand new kind of person who didn't care about self-interest, who would live happily in a collectivist paradise. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. Turns out humans still wanted money, luxury, and freedom. Shocker, right? Fast forward to today, and Maher argues we're seeing the same delusion, just in a different costume. Now it's not the new Soviet man. Now it's humans aren't born male or female. Now it's obesity has nothing to do with health. Now it's biology is just a theory. Really? Biology is just a theory? Come on. And here's the thing. Maher is right when he says you don't get to reinvent Homo sapiens just because Twitter told you it's empowering. We haven't rewritten the human body since Crystal Pepsi came out in the 90s. And you remember how that turned out. Nobody liked it and it quietly disappeared. Reality has a way of humbling bad ideas. Now, let's pause here, because some people might hear this and immediately think, oh, here we go. Bill Maher went full conservative. But that's not what's happening. Maher hasn't flipped sides. He hasn't suddenly become some MAGA cheerleader. What he's doing is way more interesting. He's calling out his own tribe for losing touch with reality. That's why it stings so badly. That's why Democrats and progressives get so defensive, because it's coming from someone who's supposed to be on their team.
The problem with communism, and with some very recent ideologies here at home, is that they think you can change reality by screaming at it. That you can bend human nature by holding your breath. But that's the difference between reality and your mommy. Lincoln once said that you can repeal all past history, but you still cannot repeal human nature. But he's canceled now, so fuck him.
And let's be honest with ourselves. When you start pushing the idea that separating sports by sex doesn't make sense, you've officially crossed over into fantasy land. That's not progressive, that's not compassionate, that's just denial of basic biology. And when a supposedly serious magazine runs that with a straight face, it shows how far the rot has spread.
Well, if you're part of today's woke revolution, you need to study the part of revolutions where they spin out of control because the revolutionaries get so drunk on their own purifying elixir, they imagine they can reinvent the very nature of human beings. Communists thought selfishness could be cast out of human nature. Russian revolutionaries spoke of the new Soviet man who wasn't motivated by self-interest, but instead wanted to be part of a collective. No, it turns out he wanted to be on a yacht in a Gucci tracksuit holding a vodka and a prostitute. Not standing in line all day for a potato.
Here's where it gets even darker. Maher draws a straight line from today's woke revolution to Mao's Cultural Revolution in 1960s China. And that's not some wild right-wing conspiracy theory. He's pointing to the exact same patterns. Mao told his citizens to throw away the 4 olds. Old customs, old culture, old habits, old ideas. Basically, everything familiar. And if you didn't comply, you got humiliated, shamed, attacked by red guards, sometimes even killed.
Yesterday I asked ChatGPT, are there any similarities between today's woke revolution and Chairman Mao's cultural revolution of the 1960s? And it wrote back, how long do you have? Because, again, in China, we saw how a revolutionary thought he could do a page-one rewrite of humans. Mao ordered his citizens to throw off the four olds: old thinking, old culture, old customs, and old habits. So, your whole life went in the garbage overnight, no biggie. And those who resisted were attacked by an army of purifiers called the Red Guard, who went around the country putting dunce caps on people. Yeah, who didn't take to being a new kind of mortal being. A lot of pointing and shaming went on. Oh, and about 1 million dead. And the only way to survive was to plead insanity for the crime of being insufficiently radical, then apologize and thank the state for the chance to see what a piece of shit you are.
Now, no one's saying today's woke left is piling up bodies, but the mindset, the obsession with purifying society, erasing history, and punishing dissent is disturbingly similar. Instead of red guards with dunce caps, we've got Twitter mobs with hashtags. Instead of state-sponsored struggle sessions, we've got sensitivity training and forced apologies. The tools have changed, but the psychology hasn't. Look at the case of Jason Kilborn, a law professor in Chicago. On an exam, he referenced slurs, but didn't even write them out. He just put the first letters. The whole point was to teach his students how to fight discrimination in real-world cases. But instead of applauding him, the university branded him a villain, banned him from campus, forced him into weeks of sensitivity training, and made him write essays about his own growth. For what? For preparing students to confront the actual ugly reality of racism in court. That's not progress. That's insanity. That's punishing someone for teaching truth.
Listen to this story. There's a law professor at the University of Illinois, Chicago, named Jason Kilborn, whose crime was that on one of his exams, he used a hypothetical case where a black female worker sued her employer for race and gender discrimination, alleging that managers had called her 2 slur words, the type of real-world case these students might one day confront. And knowing the extreme sensitivity of today's students, he didn't write the 2 taboo words on the test, just the first letter of each. He was teaching his students how to fight racism in the place where it matters most, the criminal justice system. But because he merely alluded to those words, again in the service of a good cause, he was banned from campus, placed on indefinite leave, and made to wear the dunce cap.
And it's not just in classrooms. That same suffocating culture has crept into music, entertainment, even everyday conversations. Remember Winston Marshall from Mumford & Sons? The poor guy tweeted that he liked a book, not that he endorsed a hate group, not that he joined a political rally. He just said, hey, I like this book. The mob came for him and suddenly he had to step down from his band, issue a cringing apology, and basically act like he'd committed some kind of mortal sin.
Yes, we do have our own Red Guard here, but they do their rampaging on Twitter. Here's a cute example from a couple of years ago. The banjo player from Mumford & Sons tweeted that he liked a book that apparently had not been approved by the revolution. So, of course, he had to delete the tweet, then take time away from the band. Oh my God, you mean this could have affected Mumford & Sons? And then the cringing apology, I have come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Pain? From a book? Unless he hit the drummer over the head with it.
You really want to know how ridiculous that is? Imagine John Lennon in the 60s writing Revolution. His whole point was that good intentions can turn into madness when you get so full of yourself that you think you're creating a brand new type of human being. Lennon literally warned against idolizing Chairman Mao, but here we are, decades later, with self-righteous activists doing the exact same thing Lennon said would destroy their credibility.
There was once a very different musician named John Lennon who wrote a song called Revolution. And people who didn't really listen to it thought it was a rah-rah call for revolution. No, it was the opposite. The lyrics are, you say you want a revolution? Well, you know, we all want to change the world. But if you go carrying pictures of Chairman Mao, you ain't going to make it with anybody anyhow. There's a guy who understood how good intentions can turn into the insane arrogance of thinking your revolution is so fucking awesome and your generation is so mind-bendingly improved that you have bequeathed the world with a new kind of human. You're welcome.
And let's not forget the whole healthy at any size craze. Remember when that was the woke talking point of the year? Obesity doesn't matter. Doctors are fat shaming people. You can be perfectly healthy no matter what the scale says. It was treated like gospel on social media. And yet, the cold, hard reality is that obesity kills nearly 300,000 Americans a year. That's not fat shaming, that's math. Heart disease, diabetes, strokes. These aren't internet trolls, they're real consequences. But instead of telling people the truth, the woke crowd sold them comforting lies. And guess what happened? People who needed help didn't get it. People who needed real medical guidance got hashtags instead. And lives were lost. That's not compassion, that's cruelty wrapped in fake empowerment.
With communists, that human was no longer selfish. In America today, that human is no longer born male or female. And obesity is not something that affects health. You can be healthy at any size. Really, we voted on it.
Now, here's the part Maher really hammers home. Woke culture isn't about tolerance. It's not about inclusivity. It's about obedience. True diversity isn't just skin color or pronouns. It's diversity of thought. It's being able to argue, disagree, and still live side by side. That's what makes societies thrive. But try stepping outside the woke script and you'll see how inclusive it really is. They don't want a debate. They want silence. They don't want different views. They want everyone reading from the same script or else. And you know what? That authoritarian streak is exactly why Maher's message resonates. Because whether you're left, right, or somewhere in the middle, you can feel that chill in the air, that sense that one wrong joke, one wrong tweet, one slip of the tongue could blow up your whole life. It's exhausting, it's suffocating, and it's killing the very idea of free thought.
A formerly serious magazine last year published with a straight face an article called "Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense." Yes, it does. Because again, we haven't reinvented Homo sapiens since Crystal Pepsi came out. I've spent 3 decades on TV mocking Republicans who said climate change was just a theory, and now I gotta deal with people who say, you know what else is just a theory? Biology.
And here's the real kicker. While the woke mob wastes time arguing over pronouns and redefining words, the rest of the world is racing ahead. We should be debating artificial intelligence, biotechnology, how to balance innovation with privacy, how to prepare workers for the next wave of automation. But no, here in the US, we're still stuck in endless fights about whether men and women exist. It's embarrassing. It's backwards. It's the political version of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. At the end of the day, Maher's war with woke culture isn't really about comedy. It's about survival. It's about dragging people back to reality before the whole society gets swallowed up by its own delusions. Because if we keep pretending biology is optional, if we keep canceling people for reading books, if we keep silencing professors for teaching uncomfortable truths, then we're not progressing. We're regressing. And maybe that's the biggest irony of all. The woke left claims to be the future, the cutting edge, the enlightened vanguard. But when you strip away the hashtags and the lectures, what's left isn't progress. It's fragility, it's censorship, it's denial of reality. So maybe Maher's not just telling jokes anymore. Maybe he's doing something far more important, forcing us to look in the mirror, admit that the emperor has no clothes, and ask ourselves the one question that really matters. Do we want a culture built on reality or a culture built on fantasy? And honestly, that's a question every single one of us has to answer. Because if we don't, the woke mob will answer it for us.